We'll start with a motivation as usual, starting with breathing exercise for a few moments. Then we can try to generate a good intention by thinking and contemplating may us coming here together, become cause and conditions to inspire our mind to engage in purifications so that we can purify all the negative karma, all the delusion, all the obscurations, which are the main cause of our problems, suffering. And may it be cause and conditions to generate and fully develop all the spiritual realizations. Which are the cause of ultimate happiness, inner peace. And may it become cause and condition to attain fully awakened state, so we can be most greatest benefit and help to each and every sentient beings. Okay. So then we can start with the to the founder, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfect and fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, so gather none of the world, supreme God or human beings to be tamed, teachers of God and human beings, to you, the complete and fully awakened one, endowed and destroyed, the subduer from the Shaja flame, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the Great Sangha, to all three, your devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with body as many as all realms, atoms, in all expect. The Supreme Faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberrations, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, sea condition, things as such. Through these merit, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four forms, be delivered from the samsaric oceans, and perturbed by the wave of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrated the Arya people Zen. Thus did I hear one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in the mass of Vulture Mountain in the last year, together with great community of monks and great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was observing the concentration of categories of phenomena from perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those practices also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wish to practice the activities of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that in Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wish to practice the activities of profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is emptiness. Form, emptiness, not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compulsional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without sin, no deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compulsional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No visual form, no sound, no order, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, and up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and God. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, there is the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in this time also manifestly completely awake, with unsurprisable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliable perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom declares Tata Om Kadekat Paragat Parasanga Bodhisattva. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva should train in a profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding their entirety, along with the worlds of the gods, human, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Sajipege Choshin Meto Tarira Lenchi Inde Gembadi Sanke Shinto Mite Uvai Namadashin Chukajo Yedan Gurana Mandala Niyataya. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the matters I create to listen to the Dhamma, may I become Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Soge Sonam Ba Chanchu Bado Dane Kyabje Dagi Ji Shireki Besonam Ki Dola Benje Sangye Duba Sangye Chodan Soge Sonam Ba Chanchu Bado Dane Dagi Shireki Besonam Dola Benje Sangye Duba. So we have started on discussion on the practice of purifications, and again, as I mentioned last week, we have to remember that the practice of purification is not separate from training your mind. The practice of purification is part of training your mind. So this practice is not totally different or separate from the training of mind. There are many different ways of training your mind, and this is one of the factors and the conditions to train our mind. And then I also mentioned last week, through the practice of purifications, then, and with the support of other practices, then, even those realizations that it seems impossible at the moment can be actualized easily and quickly. In regarding to that, one of the great Katamba master, Geshe Tolba said, where he said, on the side, if you continue to accumulate merit, purify obscurations, pray to the deity and guru, and if you practice with a full heart, even one thing, realization will not come in 100 years, even though one might be thinking that way, but when you do all this practice together, that it will come because it is impermanent, that is changing all the time, So the nature of the practice, nature of our mind, they all are impermanent, ever-changing. And when we change the cause and conditions, such as through the practice of purification, accumulation, merit, and Guru Yoga and so forth, then even we think that we might not be able to change our mind attitude, even though we think we might never be able to cultivate that realization, even for 100 years, but it will definitely happen. So again, so it's all about creating the cause and conditions. It's all about creating the cause and conditions, and the practice of purification is one of those conditions. One of those conditions. And we also discussed, last week, no matter how strong negative karma, how bad negative karma might be, but if we do the sense of true purification, then all of them can purify. There's nothing, no negative karma that cannot be purified. As I explained, last week we give some examples of individuals, and also Nagarjuna's in his Precious Garland, as we give with some example as well. And also in terms of once again asked, Milarepa was asked, and so Milarepa also said, if you think can negative karma be purified, and then he said, if you remember the virtues, it can be purified. If we apply the right method, the right virtues, then all this negative karma can be definitely purified. And also Milarepa also said, all the negative karma, all the heavy negative karma that we have created from the beginningless time, if we don't see them as negative, and if we don't purify, then he said, one will not become a vessel or suitable to receive the profound teachings. So even to be ready to receive profound teachings on emptiness and other profound teachings, if you don't do the purifications of all this negative karma work, we will not be even ready to receive them. Forget about realizations practice. We will not be able to even receive that. And it's similar to in one of the Aryadeva, that Nagarjuna's main disciples, as he said in his 400 stanzas or verses, you need a lot of purification, a lot of merit to hear, to receive the teaching on emptiness and to have realization of that. If you don't have that, then you wouldn't even have doubt on emptiness. Even to have doubt, you need a lot of merit and purifications. So it is kind of similar like that. So in terms of purification itself, then according to some of the some teachings, then they say that is even in Arjuna's writing, you find conventional purification and ultimate purifications. Okay, conventional purification, ultimate purifications. And conventional purification is the one that we are going to be discussing more of that at the moment, and that is through, regret and for opening power, that then you try to do the purifications, that is the conventional purifications, So for any purification to become effective, for any practice, there are so many different practices of purifications, that is taught by the Buddha, not just one particular method, but so many different methods, so many different practices. And for any of those different methods or different practice to be effective as a purifications, then very important factors is in any of those practice then to have the four opening power, need to bring the four opening power within that practice of the purifications, whatever method, if you want to. So those four opening powers, I will go through a little bit without going in detail, and maybe it might come more detail as we go through the 35 Buddha practice itself. And in that itself, so the power of object or the power of reliance, that is one of the, that. And so Shandeva said, just as, like, for example, if you have someone, your buddy or friends or families who is very powerful, and even you make some mistake, by relying on that powerful persons, you will have less fear of that being kind of, because of that, you can rely on that person to protect you, to save you, And similarly, there is a practice that we can purify all those negative karma by relying on such a powerful objects, So therefore, why shouldn't we rely on that powerful objects? That is the such as the refuge, the Buddhas, So by relying on that, then one can purify all the negative karma, very quickly, just like the fire of the fire that destroyed the planet by the fire or the heat, similarly that can destroy even the planet, and similarly, that like that. So that is relying on, the holy object by taking refuge, by going refuge to them and generating Bodhisattva mind. So that is the opening power of reliance or the objects. Okay, that is. Then second is the opening power of regret. The opening power of regret, and that is one of the very important factor as well. One of the great masters in Kedu Karma Chapman, he said, trying to purify without the regret, is not possible. One cannot purify completely of those negative karma if one does not have the regret. You want to develop a sense of regret, Therefore, one should feel strong regret and fearful, like for all the negative karma that we have created in the past, as though you have eaten a poison. For example, if you have eaten a poison, how regret and how fearful you will be to get rid of that, poison as quick as possible, And such should be the fear and the regret when we engage in the purifications for all the negative karma that we have created in the past, So that is the opening power of the regret, second one. And the third is the opening power of resolutions, making a strong determinations not to engage into such same negative karma, not to create same negative karma again in the future, And then in regard to that, in the prayer of the Pure Land, it says, again, without a resolution not to engage again in the future, then again, it cannot be purified. The negative karma cannot be purified completely. Therefore, one should generate a strong resolution or promise not to engage into such a negative karma or non-virtuous action, even at the cost of one's life. And so, even at the cost of one's life. So one should make that strong. And that as we go through the 35 Buddha, that will also be there, clearly with each of them. And then the fourth one is the opening power of the antidotes, the opening power of the antidotes. And as a way of purifying the negative karma, then engaging into any kind of the virtues is the power of antidote, and especially in the there's by relying on the sutra, then Shantideva in his Siksha Samukya, he described about the 6 main practices of purifications as an antidote, So that is, doing a frustration of purification by relying on the name, by reciting 35 Buddha names, such as, by doing purifications, by reciting the mantra, such as the Vassala purification practice, and such as, reciting sutras, such as reciting the Dhammakaya Sutra and other sutras as a purifications, and meditation on emptiness, and as a way to purify, then creating or making holy objects of such as Buddha's statues, image, stupas, temples, monasteries, printing or writing Dharma, holy Dharmas, and so forth, and then making offering to the holy objects. So those are some of the recommended practice that you see, So So within those different purification practice, the one we are going to be discussing is then this one particular practice of purification as is described, that is relying on reciting the name, by reciting the name of the Buddhas, such as 35 Buddha, then doing the purification. So that is what that is the what will be. In terms of how this sutra how this practice come in, as I mentioned, this practice is sometimes known as the Sutra of 3 hips, this practice. So it is coming from the sutra, it is from sutra, it is known as the Sutra of 3 hips, and the 3 hips that in some commentary, is the hip of purification, confession of purifications, the hip of rejoicing, and the hip of dedications. So in this practice, there are those 3 part of that, and so therefore it is okay. And then according to the Nagarjunas, there is a Nagarjuna's very short commentary by Nagarjuna on this practice. So again, even with that, we know that this practice is not kind of something created much later, and so in that he mentions, how and when this teaching or sutras or this practice or teaching was given. So it explained, there was 35 Bodhisattvas, beginner Bodhisattvas, such as Bodhisattvas Temochen, I don't know in Sanskrit or English, Tibetan names Temochen, such as, so they were on, going for alms, begging food on the alms. And while they are on that, they saw, a child, a son of a prostitute had died, and as a purifications, to do a purification for that, then Buddha kind of inspired the Kashyapa. Kashyapa was one of the Buddha's main one of the disciples known as elder, and he became the leading, the follower of the Buddha passed away. You know. So then Buddha inspired him to do the purifications. And then as a way of inspiring him to do the purification, then that is where Buddha taught this practice. You know. And it is said, it is mentioned, you know, from the heart of the Buddha Shakyamuni, the light light beams, you know, what you call radiate, you know, in a 34, and then from that, then 34 Buddhas manifest or arises. And then, of course, the Buddha Shakyamuni is the main one, and then there's other 34 Buddhas, then it becomes 35 Buddhas, you know. And then encourage all these Bodhisattvas and Kashyapa to the purifications for that child who has died, and also for them to do the purifications as them, you know. And and so all these 35 Buddha manifested in the space and Buddha Shakyamuni, and then, you know, with a great regret, then all these 35 beginner Bodhisattvas and all other followers, you know, then with a great regret, then they do the purification by taking the refuge and generating bodhicitta and doing through frustrations, you know, and then through that kind of practice, then and they were able to purify their negative karma, and then they all achieve those both beginner bodhisattvas, then they achieve Arya bodhisattvas, the path of seeing, so forth, you know. And then it is taught and encouraged in the futures, then, you know, then want to do the practice by relying on the teacher's instructions and cultivating the bodhicitta mind, and then in relying on the holy objects, whether it's a statue, image, whatever, or the paintings of the holy beings, and then doing the prostration and other practice. If you do that, then one can purify all negative karma and then achieve higher realizations. So this is kind of the background story of this practice, how it came about, as is explained by Nagarjuna. And it is explained, you know, in terms of purifications. And I think it also relates to any practice, any daily practice, and other practice as well. One should do, for the best is to do practice of purifications until you have any signs of being purified. That means weeks, months, years, lifetime. You know. And that is also taught in many others practice, daily practice, how long we should do the practice, you know. And it is said, you know, until you have certain kind of sign that you do that. That is the best. But if you cannot do that, then you try to do within a certain period for certain months or certain years. Even if you don't have any kind of sign, at least you do that. That is kind of medium, you know. And then in many, and minimums is, like then they say, in many 100,000s. That is kind of minimum, at the moment, that is our kind of the highest. But actually in many of those commentaries, that is kind of the minimum, They talk about, even in the different retreat, they talk about, the supreme retreat, middle retreat, and minimum. Minimum is the number. The supreme is that until you have a sign of achieve whatever you're trying to achieve. The middle is that you do certain period of the retreat of time. So 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, And the minimum is the number, how many ever number that is required to complete that particular retreat. And so here, is like, purifications, so, so we should be very inspired to do at least a minimum, We should be inspired to do at least a minimum, Um, And then in the, And here Nagarjuna explained, purifying the negative karma, delusion, obscuration, through the practice of four opening power is very much praised by the Buddha in the different sutras, such as the Sutra of, Four Dharma. And in the Sutra of Four Dharma is in that is the the four opening powers. In that sutra, then it explains about four opening power. Or in the sutra of clearing the regret of the one of the prince or the king, Ajanta Sutra, so in that. So it is so again, in terms of sutra, those are the source of the sutra on practice. And then according to another, commentaries, then it's so in terms of purifying, there are many different ways of purifying according to, how heavy and how light those negative karma are, And so there are negative karma that one should purify, within the collections of, 10 practitioners, 5 practitioners gathered, and from 1 or 2 or 7, and also purifying in front of 35 Buddhas. And so here we are doing that practice in terms of 35 Buddhas. In same way, Lama Tsongkhapa explained, his in his short lumbering on experiential hums, it's very important to purify. It's extremely important to purify the negative karma and obscurations, and therefore, to rely on the four opening power every day is very important. Therefore, rely on four opening power is very important. And so, according to many of the master traditions, morning you do 35 Buddhas practice. In the evening you do Bodhisattva practice. So it says, you don't pass 24 hours without doing any purification. So by morning, when you do 35 Buddha, you purify whatever negative karma we might have created during the nighttime. And then we try to purify in the evening through Bodhisattva, whatever negative karma that we have created throughout the day. So each day we try to purify. And so that is one of the better traditions many of the practitioners and teachers try to do, 35 Buddha in the morning and Bodhisattva in the evenings, And so if we can do that, that is wonderful. If we cannot do that, at least maybe we can do one of them, And then when it comes to the actual practice itself, I think if you have the practice, probably you might have the practice, First visualizations, of the 35 Buddhas. And they are very different. You find very different 35 Buddha with a different, color, different posture or mudras, and different implements, and each of those Buddhas in many of the traditions. And sometimes it's hard for us to visualize each of them 35 Buddha within the short period when you're doing the practice. So, as Paponga Rinpoche in his liberation palm, as he give the instruction, how can we make it more simplified visualizations? And the simplified visualizations is similar like John showed you at the very beginning, the image of that, Buddha Shakyamuni, from the heart of Buddha Shakyamuni, then you see the, at the heart of Buddha Shakyamuni, then of course there's Cheresik, there's Lama Zopa Rinpoche make. Even though you can visualize 1,000-arm Cheresik is better, even if you cannot have that, at least, from the heart of his heart, then 34 rays of what you call light shines, and on each of them light, and then there's 35 Buddha, and each line, first line, there's 6 Buddhas, and then next, 774 lines. Okay. Yeah, so you can see mainly, here, Buddha Shakyamuni in front, then there is a, 1,000-arm Cheresik, and those, if you can visualize, that is also great. If you cannot visualize, also it's this is, so in the first row, there is, 6 Buddha, and then second, third, fourth, fifth, there is 7 Buddhas, each of them. And so then all become 35 total, And then those are the same as the 5 Buddha families, And so each of those 6, they have same colors, same mudras, so it is more easy to visualize that. The only difference is in first row, the third one, or the fourth one, in image is the third one, but in terms of when you recite is the fourth one. Luwangi Gyabo, the king of the Naga, that is, his face is white. That is the only difference. So this is the visualization. So you can have a Tanga image of this, then if you use that as a visualization to visualize 35 Buddha, so it's very much more easier to visualize this one, this image, because if you Google 35 Buddha, you will see many different, of 35 Buddhas. Some of them very different posture and the colors and what they hold, different implements. So this one can be very helpful, easy visualizations that we can do. Okay. So that we try to visualize, in the space above you. Okay. And then you can, so that is the visualizations that one can do. And then, one can visualize also surrounding you, all sentient beings, as equal as yourself, as equal as yourself, engaging into the practice, And then, like any practice, again, starting with cleaning the space of meditation. If you can clean, you try to clean it, and then you set up the altar with that image of 35 Buddhas. If you have, that can help your visualizations, and all other holy objects. Then you set up the offerings, and then you sit on cushions. You try to visualize, and then try to generate a good intention, motivation for the practice, the Bodhisattva motivations, practice. Then you can do a short or long or medium, refuge in the Bodhisattva by reciting those refuge in the Bodhisattva 3 times, and you can do that practice. Then you do the 4 immeasurable, and then if you can do the 7 limb, the extensive, medium, short, that would be good, and then short, long mandala offerings, And then, again, while you visualize those 35 Buddha, again, you think, it is your own root guru who is manifesting those 35 Buddha. And those 35 Buddha are inseparable from your root guru. And also, those 35 Buddha encompasses all other Buddhas. And so then try to think, and then if you can do long, short, medium Guru Yoga, that would be even wonderful, starting with that Guru. And then you actually then do the 35 Buddha practice as here, Okay. So first is doing the purifications. So before that, then there is the reciting the mantra to multiply the merit, of the prostrations, So Om Nam Minju Shira Nama Su Shira Nama U Nama Shiriya. So you can do 3, and then you know, you know, 7. Here it says 7. One of the things I want to make, you know, is sometimes even you might not be able to do exact number as is described here. When you don't have so much time, you can do just 3 or just 1 is also good, you know. You don't feel that if you cannot, do you get what I mean? Sometimes you feel there are so many numbers recommended to do, and then you don't have time to do it, then you don't do it because you don't have time to do all these numbers. Instead, you can just do 1 and you will have to find the time to do it. And so if you say like 21, you know, for example, it's 21, and you can't do 21 because your time is running out, and then you feel I can't do this practice because you don't have time to 21. So that's just to give you one example of that, you know. And so then the other mantra of Namvakavadi, Ranakitu, Ranjaya, Tadakadaya, Arhate Samyo Sampada, Kayata, Umprane, Rane, Maharane, Rana Vijay Soha. Again, here is 7. If you can do 7, that's wonderful. Again, if you cannot, again, you know, you can recite 3 times. Even not that, and at least 1 time, you know. Then come the actual the 35 Buddha practice itself. Homage to the compassion of the Bodhisattva Downfall, you know. And I say your name, you know, normal name, you know, Geshe Sherab, throughout all time, take refuge to the Guru. So then that is where then going to the refuge, you know. So again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, in order for any purification to be effective and work, you need to have 4 opening powers. And so here, starting with the first opening power of the reliance, the opening power of the reliance, or the opening power of the objects. So that is going to the refuge, okay? Going to the refuge. So while you go for the refuge, then you start doing the frustrations, you know. So then I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. You know, you could add, you know, 1 more. You know, I take refuge to the Guru, I take refuge to the Buddha, I take refuge to the Dharma, I take refuge to the Sangha. Or you can add 1 more. I take refuge to the Guru, I take refuge to the Idam, I take refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So then with that, then is going refuge to the Guru, Idam, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And with each of them, then you do, you know, as you recite that, maybe you might be able to recite 3 times. I go refuge to the Buddha, I go refuge to the Guru, I go refuge to the Guru, while you do 1 frustrations. Then you do the next frustration, you know, I go refuge to the Idam. And while you do frustration, probably you will be able to recite 3 times of that. So you can just recite 1, or if you can recite 3, even better, you know, if you do that, you know, then verbally you are creating more merit. Even though physically you are just doing 1, verbally you can do 3, you know. And same with each of those, you know, then Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, okay? So you rely on the objects of the, you know, Guru, Idam, and Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha to purify. You rely on them in order to purify. And so objects of reliance, or the objects of the opening power of objects. You use that object for purifications. Okay. So in terms of that, you know, again, in some of our commentary, they says, you know, as a way of purifications. When you fall down, for example, when we fall down, you know, and when you need to get up from being fall down, then you rely on the same objects to get up. Yeah, if I slip on the floor because the floor is wet, I fall down because of the floor, which is wet. So in order to get up, I have to rely on the same floor to get up. Same way when you have downfall or create negative karma, we create either in relation with the holy object or either in relation with sentient beings. And when you try to purify, we rely on the same object in order to purify. So to purify all the negative karma that we have created in relation to the holy object, then we go to refuge to the them, such as Guru, Idam, and Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So through that, then we purify whatever negative karma we have created in relation to them. And as a way to purify all the negative karma that we have created in relation to the sentient beings, we try to generate Bodhisattva mind towards all sentient beings. We try to generate Bodhisattva intention, motivation to sentient beings. So therefore, we rely on the same objects to get up. When we fall, same way, in order to purify the negative karma that we have created in relation to, we rely on the same objects to purify them. And so therefore, that is objects, why it's called reliance. Sometimes you see that translation, reliance. We rely on the same objects when we purify. And that's taking refuge and generating Bodhisattva mind. Okay? So now come to while we recite the 35 Buddha practice, then we do the frustrations. And so now discussing a little bit of the frustration before we actually go more detail into the practice step. Okay? When we talk about frustrations, first of all, there is a frustrations through body, speech, and mind. Okay? Frustration through body, speech, and mind. In terms of frustration with the body, then there are, full frustration, half frustrations, and then, just folding your hand. So again, there are many different levels of different type of frustrations. Okay. Full frustration is when you throw your whole body to the floor. Okay. And that one again is said in one of the sutras, by the Buddha. There was Shunu Norsang. In a sutra course, the area of trunk, the tree trunk, it says, you should prostrate the Norsang, saying to that Bodhisattva, Norsang, you should prostrate like the tree trunk has fall, flat, fall down. And same way, you just put all your body in that. So that is full frustrations. And when you do the frustrations, normally, you hold your folded hand, okay, like this, not a flat, okay. This flat is more of, in India and Nepal, they are greeting, namaste, they do that flat like that. But when you do the frustration, you put two thumbs inside, and then you make like a shape of jewel, and there is meaning in that, There is a meaning that, by folding two hands together like that, it symbolizes the union of the method and the wisdom, the union of method and wisdom. or, like the empty space inside symbolize emptiness, okay? Emptiness. And the outside shape symbolize the method. Or the inside, the empty space symbolize the Dhammakaya, and then outside symbolize the Rupakaya, the two Buddhas as well. So it symbolizes that. So then with that, then you try to, put on the top of your crown head, first one, and then second, at your forehead, by the forehead, third by your speech, and fourth by your heart, and then you go down, and as though that your head and your hand is touching the feet of the Buddha, So you do that that is full place prostrations. By putting your hand together for your crown, then you create the merit to have, when you become enlightened, Ushnisha, the pinnacle at the Buddhas, you see that, and that is, so we create the merit, we create the cause for that. And that pinnacle is not just is not a fashion, design, it is it helps to, it is to benefit in other sentient beings. There's one sutta the Buddha gave, the Sutra of White Umbrella, that comes from the pinnacle. So Buddha was silent, but the teaching came from that, And that putting your hand together on the forehead, then you create the merit to have the, at the Buddha's forehead, there is a hair, round hair like here, to create that. By putting your speech, then you create the cause and condition to have a melodious speech, enlightened speech with 60 qualities. By putting your heart, then you create cause and condition to have enlightened mind. Also, in some others, also you can also think, by putting together your hand on the forehead, you purify all the negative karma created through the body. By putting your speech by the throat, then you purify all the negative karma that you have created through the speech. By putting your heart, then you purify all the negative karma that you have created through the mind. So purifying all the negative karma that we have created through body, speech, and mind, at the same time creating cause and conditions for enlightened body, speech, and mind, and that. So that is the full place. And then if you cannot do full place, because then you can do the half prostration as well. Of course, the best is if you can do the full place is the best, because in some, sutras it's mentioned, how much effort when you prostrate, cover the space, that much of the atom that is down there, that much of you create merit. So is if you can do the full pace, then it's better. But if you cannot, then you do the half prostrations, and that is touching your two knees and your forehead and two hands. Half, that is half prostrations. And then even you cannot do that, then you just fold your hand and bow down, So that is another prostrations. For example, you might have some physical issues where you cannot bend, you cannot bend. So that doesn't mean you cannot do the prostration, 35 Buddha prostrations. Okay? You can just fold your hand, reciting each of the Buddha's name, and you bow down. That is also prostrations. So we have no excuse not to do the practice, because Buddha was very compassionate and he gives some method, for those who can do more, or those who cannot do that, then they're easier, and those who cannot due to their physical conditions and that, and so there is, again, you can still do that. And like in some practice, when you are busy with one hand holding the text, so you don't have you cannot fold both hands in that cases because you are holding a text or something, reading it. So then in that time, then you just holding like this, one hand like that and bowing. That's also prostrations. Okay, physical prostrations. And then speech prostrations is reciting the name or reciting the praise of the objects, So reciting the name of the holy objects, or reciting certain praise of that objects by recollecting their qualities and reciting the praise of that. So that is the prostration through speech. And the mind is, having the strong faith, devotions, and respect. That is the mental prostrations. Mental prostration, that is the mental prostrations. So the prostration through body, speech, and mind. And if we can use all three together, then, that is wonderful. That is the best way to make our prostration more meaningful, more powerful, in terms of prostrations, Yeah. So again, each of those movements, when you do prostrations, they all have meaning, they all have meaning. The great Sakya Pandit, the great Sakya Pandit wrote a prayers after the prostration, to do after the prostrations, and to have the visualization. So he says, by holding two hands together, may I actualize the union of the method and wisdom, as I mentioned before, by putting it on the crown head, may I be able to take a rebirth in the pure land of Vajrayogini, by putting on your forehead, may it purify all the negative karma created by body. By putting on your throat, may it purify all the negative created by the speech. By putting on your heart, may all the negative karma that were created by mind be purified. When you put your hand together, and then all these different, thumbs, not thumbs, together, may one be able to help but benefit sentient beings through the true Rupakaya, By putting your 2 feet or 2 knee, down, may one be able to purify from the samsara, release from the samsara, By when you prostrate, by putting your 10 5, not the thumbs and what?
Fingers.
Fingers. So thank you. By putting those 10 fingers down, when you prostrate, may I be able to actualize the 10 bhumis and 5 paths, by touching the forehead, may I be able to actualize the 11 bhumis, by the 4 limbs, the knee and hand, the 4 limbs up and down, may I be able to simultaneously benefit others through 4 activities, by all our muscles and all the body, by up and down, by moving it, may it clear all my inner channels, And by going down and then getting up, may I be able to free from the samsara and achieve nirvana, And by doing that many times, then may we be able to achieve non-abiding nirvana. So in that his prayer, so it gives some idea how to visualize and how each of those movements or different movements that we do during the prostration, how each of those movements create cause and condition for all of that. So I think being aware, remembering that, be helpful, because we know each of that has a cause. We're creating many different cause and conditions. So that is of course we talk about the purifications, and then I don't know, maybe I don't know whether I should read it, but also in sutras, 2 different sutras, Buddha explained about the benefit, 10 benefits of prostrating, In one sutra, Buddha talked about 10 different benefits of prostration. By doing prostrations, then what kind of virtues you create, So yeah, in one of the sutra, the Lenamje, in that it's one of they're saying to someone named as Nejo, by putting your hand together to the statues, of the Tathagatas, then you get those 10 benefits, And what are those 10 benefits, Then you will be born in a royal families. You will have a great, great physical bodies. You will have a great companions. You will receive a great offerings, great service. You will have a great wealth. You will have a great studies. You will have great knowledge. You will have a extensive and great faith. You will develop a great memories, you will develop a great wisdom, and then you will develop and generate a great realizations. And such are the 10 different benefits of putting hand together and prostrating. So again, you see in the sutras. And another sutta, then again, Buddha also explained of 10 benefits, not exactly the same, but some slightly different benefits. So there are so many benefits of doing the prostrations. Again, if we remember all these benefits, then again we will be more inspired to do the prostrations. It's purifying, at the same time creating all cause and condition for such. So trying to remember that as much as possible. Then when you do the prostrations, as it is said, as we visualize, as it is said in king of the prayers, one can visualize, countless body of oneself while you are doing prostrating. Visualize countless yourself, and each of you, many heads, each of those heads, many, many tongues, reciting so many prayers. I don't know, but sometimes we might feel a little bit uncomfortable doing that kind of visualization. If it's uncomfortable doing that, then it is also mentioned because we have taken countless rebirth from the beginner's lifetime. And so there is countless rebirth that we have taken. So you can visualize all this rebirth in the form of human beings and manifesting as equal as the space and doing frustrations. So again, even though physically you are doing one frustration, but if you can visualize that, then you accumulate much more merit through the power of your visualizations. So when you prostrate and you think, and then in terms of the Buddha, you can also feel 35 Buddha, for example, in each of the atoms in the world, all the Buddhas are there in each of atoms, so there is equal numbers of atoms and each of those atoms, then there's countless Buddhas. So then you can visualize making a frustration with that amount of the enlightened beings, the Buddhas, and then yourself as equal as the space that doing frustration together. So again, if we can just are able to take little time to just visualize, then your practice can become much more powerful and beneficial. So, and that we can do whenever we do any prostration, we can visualize and doing that anytime, all the times, Mm. Mm. So, does anyone have any questions? Because from then after you do the going to the refuge 3 times, then even though it is not mentioned here, then you, I think probably it will come later. I know. Mm. Then you also try to generate the Bodhisattva mind, as a part of the first open-end power, the open-end power of the reliance or the So take few moments to kind of generate the Bodhisattva mind as much as you can. So then taking refuge and generating Bodhisattva mind act as the power, open-end power. And then next one, when you recite the 35 Buddha's name, then that is purifying through by open-end power of the antidotes. Here the antidote is reciting the name of the Buddhas. Okay, the antidote. By reciting the name of the Buddha, then doing prostrations is the antidote here. And so that is where next starts. So up to here, going to the refuge, then we finish the open-end power of the objects or reliance. Okay, and even though the Bodhisattva is not, it doesn't come in the word itself, but you try to generate the Bodhisattva mind. And so then that combined Bodhisattva mind and the refuge, then the opening power. And from the next one is the recitations of the 35 Buddha's name. Mm. Mm. And that start the opening power of the antidotes. The antidotes here is reciting the name and then prostrating. Mm. do you have any questions so far?
I have a question, Geshe Sherab.
Yes, please.
You said you gave that comparison of when you fall on a slippery floor that you use the floor to get up. And you said that when we create a negative karma, it's against either the triple gem or sentient beings. And so we rely on the triple gem or the sentient beings to purify. And my question is, how do we rely on sentient beings to purify?
Rely here, we don't rely in the same way that we rely on the Buddhas or the holy objects such as Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. But because we create a negative karma in relation to them, we also need to generate Bodhisattva mind in relation to them, and that Bodhisattva mind helps to purify the negative karma that's created in relation to them. So it's the same objects. The object of your Bodhisattva is the same sentient beings to whom we create a negative karma. So it's the same objects. The object of creating negative karma is the sentient beings. And then when we purify, we try to generate Bodhisattva mind. And the Bodhisattva mind is generated by relying on the same objects. That is the sentient beings.
Okay.
Yeah?
So
That's
I
clear?
get,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, thank you.
So any other questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you. If when in this and in other practices where we visualize other sentient beings doing the practice with us, to me it seems like somewhat maybe impolite, like we need to ask permission for them to take part. Maybe they don't want to take part in this practice. And maybe I can just imagine, okay, and then that's fine. I don't need to ask their permission because it's just pretend. But if I really try to think that it's actually happening, then it seems not quite right. It seems a little bit impolite, like asking, like getting them to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. So how do we? I was curious how to do that respectfully.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you care about someone really, even they don't want to do, you try to push them. For if someone cared about you and they are, let's say they are misusing a substance, and you want them to be clean of that, and they don't want to go through rehabilitation or any kind of program. And as someone who care about them, you have to push them. Instead of being, doesn't matter, he can do whatever he wants. If he wants, he can do. If he doesn't want, he can do. It doesn't matter, Someone who really care about them, then definitely they will, even they are not ready, even they feel they are not ready, they will push them. So it doesn't necessarily mean impolite. It just means compassion, because you want them to best, and that is, you see, that is the best. Maybe they might not agree not, but you are doing best. Just like someone who is trying to help you, them to come clean of it. And when you recommend them to do those different programs that can help them, they might not think it's beneficial for them, or they don't want to do it. But someone who really cares, then you try to encourage them, you try to push them, you do every form or however you do so they can come out clean, because you really care about them, you really want to help them. And so similarly, we can also think in that similar way, in the similar way. We are not pushing them directly, okay? But in our practice, if you think that if you have that some struggle with that, if you feel that struggle, then you can think that as an example, I don't know
yeah.
that will help you.
No, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in reality, of course, we don't try to push them, you know, that could get in a big trouble, you know. We can only try to inspire them, but in our mind, then that is what we do, and that is because we want them to the best, so that they can create the right cause and condition for their own happiness, you know. And so, yeah. And so, and also another way of looking at that is we are not trying to make them do something they don't want. You know, it's not the intention of visualizing that. The whole visualization is that the practice that you are trying to do is because you feel that is the best, that is beneficial. So in the same way, we want to visualize things, something doing best for everyone best, for all sentient beings best, you know. So that is the purpose and the visualization of that, and generating the Bodhisattva mind, not only thinking of practice for yourself, but also thinking all engaging that virtuous practice, you know. So is to expand your mind, expand your mind to more sentient beings in that way. So yeah.
That's very positive. Thank you.
Most welcome. Okay, any questions again before?
Geshe-la.
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you. I enjoy purification practices, but I believe that my purification isn't as strong as it could be, and I'm trying to think about, is it because one of the four opponent powers is weaker, or is it because going back to just not haven't realized karma, you know, I still don't have an incredibly deep understanding of karma. I'm just wondering, you know, I'm doing the practices and I have faith, but there's just something where sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this could be purified. There's just still some doubt. And I'm wondering, do you have some advice for me, please?
Well, you know, one of the things is trust in the Buddha's teachings. First of all, we have done all the investigations about the Buddha's teachings through what we are taught about the wisdom, about the nature of things, about method, love, and compassions, and there's no reason for Buddha to lie about how this purification works, how it purifies. There's nothing for him to gain by lying it. He's not someone who tried to do that. So therefore, even though we cannot see many of those things immediately, but it must be. And so having the trust in the Buddhas and Buddha's teachings, then if we have total trust in that, then definitely it should be working, you know. And sometimes we are looking for a sign, immediate sign. You know, immediate sign, it doesn't work that way, you know, even with the karma, you know. The result for that to manifest can take whole life, or maybe next life, or many next life. And sometimes we think the purification not working because, you know, situation has changed in my life or in my practice, seems getting worse than getting better, you know. So it feels like sometimes it is not working, you know, because we are looking for a instant gratification, instant result. Sometimes or instant result or very obvious result. Sometimes things are happening very subtly, in subtle way that we are unable to be aware of. You know, things are happening, things are changing, things are purifying, but it is happening in very subtle way that we cannot observe, we cannot see it. You know, and so that is the things that I think sometimes we doubt because, you know, we cannot see the result tangible now, something we can really say, oh, I did this and this happens. Because it's not so tangible. And so that is where the doubt comes. Sometimes the doubt comes because it's not so tangible, and we want to feel it, we want to touch it, and so, but whether it's a purification, or the accumulation merit, whether it's imprint, all those are practice, or karma, doesn't necessarily manifest immediately, just as our actions might not have effect on the, certain things immediately, but that can have effect after 20 years, 30 years, or 100 years later. For example, as the citizen of this world, the actions of our 100 years of the human beings is having an effect in climate now. It didn't happen like that in 1 year. It didn't happen in just 10 years. But over the decade and century, now effect is felt now. The effect of all this is being felt now after 100 centuries. And because the effect is not felt immediately, then that is why a lot of people think, oh, I'm not contributing for any bad things because I don't feel that. That's how they felt. And so that's same with our inner practice as well. We might not feel the differences now through that practice, but that doesn't mean it's not having any effect. We might feel the effect of that much more later. Either this life, future life, many lifetimes, especially when we talk about many lifetimes. So I think not having that kind of expectation to change immediately, and having the faith in the Buddhas and Buddha's teachings, and also, with all of that, so yeah, I think that can, and not only Buddha, trusting all the great masters, to trust His Holy Dalai Lama, to trust Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Lama Tsongkhapa, and all those great beings, true practitioners, true masters, and they have nothing to gain by making such a false claims. They have nothing to gain from us by making such a false claim if it's not true. And they all have mentioned very clearly how those practices help to purify. So of course, depending on how strong our purification is, that can affect how much we are able to purify. Sometimes we might be able to purify a lot of negative karma, sometimes very small, depending on that. But no matter how small it is still having some effect, still being purified, So it's not being wasted. It's not gone wasted, And so I think that is, yeah. So we do the dedications. Again, you can join in chanting, or you can recite quietly English, whatever you feel comfortable. Yawadi nyoto da lama sangye do yone do chi jama leva te sala geba sho. Chancho senjo Rinpoche ma ke bana ke kyochi ke wa nyamba me va yang kong le kong do ke wa la sho. Shibe kam de pende ma lu pa kang le chung le sanbe ye shi no ka tin chung me tin zin ja so la so wa de so tu che lun do sho. Tu tu chang xin chang gun ya wei, ten zin yong bei wei, kun so to ho lo ju, cho sun gu wei le mo tu ju, pa da so du je gun du sha ten shu. A ba nu cho sa de do wa, la ya wa gun le la bei tin jen jen, la yang sam xin cho de li li, su jun la ga din ten bei ke sha fu. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.